Berserk is a story full of interesting and complex characters, but there is one who we know almost nothing about and he is still a main piece of the puzzle. I'm talking about the King Gaiseric. In an interview, Miura said that Berserk is a 1000-year story, and the reason is His Majesty. So today we'll discuss about everything we know about King Gaiseric. The problem is that we don't know that much, but there are a lot of small details and dialogues that hint at what might have happened. So there will be a lot of speculating that might turn out to be wrong, but that's the fun in making theories. It really gives you some food for thought. We also need to assume that School Knight is King Gaiseric. It's not confirmed, but come on man, it's obvious. I mean, in the later chapters it was revealed that he was indeed the king, and even in the chapter that King Gaiseric is introduced, it said that he wore a skull helmet and got immediately think at School Knight. Also, this video contains spoilers for the entire story of Berserk up until now, which is chapter 371, so I will advise you to pause this video, go read the full manga and then come back. I will give you 2 seconds. Okay, you done? So with that out of the way, let's start the story. In the beginning, more than 1000 years ago. Well, this is the part we know the least about, so here will be the most speculation. It says that King Gaiseric arrived one day with a giant army, but where does this army come from? My theory is that King Gaiseric had connection, or he was from Elfhelm. We know that Elfhelm was attacked at one point by a nation and a big war started, so what if King Gaiseric was the leader of the group? And the war was stopped when he met the queen of Elfhelm and they fall in love with each other, so the two groups were united. The other theory is that King Gaiseric was born in Elfhelm and he was either royalty or he just married the queen, so again the same point. This will explain why he came one day from nowhere, because for normal people Elfhelm is just a myth and they don't even know what magic is. We know that the mages from Elfhelm know a type of magic that can make an empty armor a soldier. Basically a golem. So if this theory is true, we can assume that King Gaiseric was helped by the queen and the mages to create a giant army. He also received a very strong piece of armor, the Berserker armor, from a dwarven blacksmith named Hanar. But in order to keep his killer instinct in check and not lose control, he was helped by a witch named Flora. Similar how Shirki helps Guts by repressing the Beast of Darkness. With all these tools and allies, Gaiseric traveled to a place where multiple tribes and small nations were at war, and he was able to defeat all of them by sheer force, conquering an entire continent. And from this point onwards, he was known as the Supreme King Gaiseric. After the war was over, he named his new continent Midland, because it was the land in the middle of the nations. But King Gaiseric was also known to be a very cruel king. At some point he even received the nickname the Demon King. He loved battles and he was an absolute beast, especially with the Berserker armor on. Now with the war over and no more battles, he was focused on a new goal, to create a massive capital city from where he will rule over his new kingdom. This capital city was Falconia. Well, not actually Falconia. Falconia is a modified version of the old capital. We will get to that later. The point I'm trying to make is that this was the kingdom King Gaiseric made, but his method to create it was extremely cruel. He enslaved the entire continent, putting them to work to death. Not only that, but he demanded very high taxes from his people, increasing them over the years. While the whole kingdom struggled to survive, he lived a luxurious life in his capital, and slowly the city had become a melting pot of feasting and pleasures. Even though he was cruel to the whole continent, he was a different person with his close one. Well, at least his wife. We know that he loved her deeply and treated her like a queen. She was very precious to him. As for her, well, we know that she was from Elfhelm and that she loved him too. But that's about it. We don't know if she was okay with how the kingdom was ruled or if she was against it. But there was someone close to the king that opposed his methods, and that was a sage. There is very little information about the sage. I will try to put together a story with the information we have, so expect a lot of holes in it. The sage was a person close to the royal family. He was good friends with the king and queen, but he didn't like how the people were enslaved. He did care for everyone who lives in the kingdom, so he decided at one point to confront the king about it and tell him how wrong he was and how he needs to stop. But the king didn't take this too well, so he imprisoned him in the Tower of Conviction, putting him through torture every day. But he continued to proclaim the sins of the king to the god every single day, while waiting for his death. But he was awaited by something much greater than death. There is a legend that 4 or 5 angels were sent by the god to destroy King Gaisric's kingdom, and end his tyranny. By lightning and great earthquakes, the city was erased from the world. But we know that in that night was actual an eclipse. In that night, a new member of the God Hand was born. That's why it was 4, then 5. The whole capital was caught in the eclipse. The God Hand offered the sage the opportunity to become one of them, but in order to do that, he will have to sacrifice the people he loves, and he accepted, because he wanted to end the suffering created by the king. A giant brand of sacrifice was formed over the city. Even the king and the queen were branded. Not too long after that, a lot of people were slaughtered and killed in a gruesome way, and a new member of God Hand was born. He was named Void. Gaiseric fought it with everything he had while wearing the Berserker armor, but all his efforts were in vain. His wife died in his hand, with her gently touching his face for the last time. Meanwhile, in the background, he saw his entire city burning. Everything he worked for was taken away in just a matter of seconds. In that moment, the king loses control. He fights until his all bones were broken and his blood all drained from his body, but he couldn't do nothing to stop the eclipse, and the city had fallen. It is said that the city was buried underground and the Tower of Rebirth was built above to seal the past. But in the whole is just a small piece of the city. The rest of it was most probably taken into the astral world by the God Hand. But this is not the end of the Supreme King. His soul was saved by probably Flora before he completely died, and she took it back with her to Elfhelm and then to Hanar. He created for him a new suit of armor, and his soul was transferred into it. And thus, this was the end of a foolish king and the beginning of a wraith wandering through an endless night. The foe of inhuman beings, the School Knight. Sadly, what Flora did was considered a taboo. A mage is not allowed to mess with the soul, so she was exiled from Elfhelm. She retreated into the woods, where she created a mansion to live in, and she also took the Berserker armor with her. This event happened around 1000 years ago. Now the Supreme King Gaiseric is just a piece of history, and School Knight is just an unarrested soul seeking revenge. Sadly, we know close to nothing of what School Knight did in those 1000 years up to the present. We know that this set of God Hand is different from what we have today. So what happened to them? Well, two possibilities. We know that a new God Hand is born every 216 years, and it could be only a maximum of 5. So what if they are already 5? No more God Hands? Or the oldest one just dies to make room for a new one? It doesn't seem that likely. Apostles are immortal, so why wouldn't their master be the same? The point I'm trying to make is that maybe, but just maybe, the School Knight killed all of them except Void. But to be honest, that seems a bit too far-fetched, even for him. We know at least that he was making a plan to kill the God Hand. So he hunted apostles to kill them and take their behelits in order to melt them and create the Sword of Actuation, a weapon that allows the user to open a portal to the deepest point of the astral world. With this sword, he could absorb the God Hand into the portal and get rid of them. Not only that, but he also intervened a lot with the God Hand's plans. He seems to know each one of them very well even before they become the God Hand. And they seem to know him too very well. School Knight has also some kind of foresight. He knows what's gonna happen next and when it will happen. He also knows that he can stop the God Hand, but at least he can change the details. And with enough details change, maybe the outcome will be different. And that's what he did until the present. From here on, the story of Berserk and Guts started, so we will not have that much speculation and the information will be more accurate. After Guts leaves the Band of the Hawk, School Knight makes his first appearance in the story. He warns Guts about the tragic events that are about to come. He tells him that in 1 year the eclipse will come and he and his friends will have a horrible death. And that implies that he has information about the eclipse down to the smallest details. The next time we see him was when he saved Rickard from a group of apostles, telling them to withdraw, and they immediately leave, showing just how powerful he is and how much apostles are scared of him. He saved Rickard because he'll be important later. Those are the small changes that I was talking about. Warning Guts about the eclipse, saving Rickard who will have a bigger role later, and even saving Guts and Casca. All of these changes will create a snowball effect and maybe they could finally do something to stop the God Hand. When the eclipse started, School Knight tried to enter it, but he was stopped by Nosferatu's Zod. He managed to win the battle, but he lost a lot of time. When he finally was able to enter, the first thing he saw was Void, and he takes a swing at him, but he misses, and the two of them stare at each other for a moment, showing how much he wants to take his revenge from what he did to him, but there is no time for it now. So he rushes to save Guts and Casca, and he takes them to a safer place. Not too long after Guts wakes up, Skull Knight will visit him again, teaching him about the brand of sacrifice and how to fight against the spirits that hunt him. But for now, they will say farewell. 2 years passes since the eclipse, and Skull Knight will show up again at the Tower of Conviction, and he does what he always does. Warns Guts what is about to come, helps him, and saves other people that might be important later, basically changing small details as usual. The more interesting part is when he saved Guts from Slan. They were surrounded by monsters, so Skull Knight decided that this is the perfect moment to try his new sword, and it turns out that the sword was extremely powerful. So he thinks that it might be the time to use it against the God Hand. But first, he needs to help Flora, because she is in danger. Griffith sent his men after her. Skull Knight asks her to give his old armor to Guts, the Berserker armor. When apostles attacked, he defended her from them to give her a peaceful death. After everything was over, Skull Knight started to act his plan. He waited until an opportunity will arrive to strike one of the God Hand, and that was when Femto confronted Genishka. Skull Knight took advantage of that moment, so he took a swing at him with the Sword of Actuation, but the problem was the sword didn't have any effect on him. Much worse, Femto waited him, because that sword was the key to merging the two worlds together, so Skull Knight was tricked. And much worse, Femto had bring back King Gaiseric old capital city, but this time was modifying his image and renamed Falconia. We never saw Skull Knight's reaction to his old city, but we can only assume that it had brought him some bad memories. Skull Knight decides to go on Elfhelm to visit someone dear to him and reflect on his past. He also meets Guts, and both of them go to see Hanar, the creator of the two armors. Hanar shows Guts the memories that lies in the Berserker armor, and he learns about Skull Knight's past and how he died. With that done, now he wants to go to his wife's grave and pay some respect for her. Shortly he is accompanied by Dnan, the Elfhelm Queen, who looks very similar to Skull Knight's dead wife, but sadly I have no idea what this could mean. The last time we see Skull Knight is when Elfhelm was destroyed. He protected Guts' party while the whole island was sinking, and along that was his wife's grave, so he is definitely not happy about everything that happened recently. His former capital was brought back by his enemies. Now he'll be forced to see that place every time he wants to go after the God Hand or any other apostles, because this is their base now, and they are stronger than ever. Everything had come back to hunt him. It is truly the worst case scenario for him, and most sadly, this is the end of the story for now. And that's everything we know about King Gaiseric so far. It will be funny to come back here and see how wrong I was. I will make another video when a new big reveal will come, but that will take quite a while because Berserk is on hiatus again. Yay! But if you enjoyed this video, hit a like and a subscribe, and maybe follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Twitch. And if you want more videos Berserk related, I will be more than happy to make another one, so just let me know in the comments. Okay guys, that's all for now, see you in my next video. Peace!